So I've said it once this week and I'm going to say it again. This is my favorite time of the year, and there are several different reasons as to why. We can talk about the holidays. We can talk about all of the sports we as sport fans get to enjoy around this time of the year. But to be very honest, in my opinion, the gift that just keeps on giving is college football recruiting. And already several times this week, we've sat down and talked about prospects making national headlines. And once again on this Friday morning, we find ourselves sitting here talking about a top 100 prospect, Jaden Rashada, the four-star quarterback who was committed to Miami, but last night in the dead of night flipped his commitment from Miami to the Florida Gators. Today, we need to break down what this means for both institutions. We need to ask a tough question of the Miami Hurricanes. And finally, we need to discuss the implications winning has on recruiting. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe it's time to panic for the Miami Hurricanes? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below as those interactions are massive. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And as I hinted to in the intro, Jaden Rashada is a very gifted prospect, coming in specifically per 24/7 Sports Composite as the number 57 overall player in the nation, regardless of position, and the number 7 quarterback. But one thing that's interesting to note is if we look at 24/7 Sports rankings themselves, they have him as a top 20 prospect in the nation. What that tells me, he's a prospect for you to keep your eye on to see just where he falls once all the rankings are finalized. Now, that being said, Jaden Rashada was an interesting prospect to keep up with, especially when he committed to Miami. Because once he committed to Miami, there was almost a snowball effect, and the Miami hype train was at an all-time high. Something we talked about several times this summer. And whenever we'd have these conversations, the one thing I would always turn our attention to was how important it was for Miami to take that hype and turn it into something tangible. Because they were already flying high over the summer on the recruiting trail, but if they were able to hit the season and translate that hype into something tangible during the course of this season, I said it then, they would have to be a team you have got to keep your eye on. And even now, even though the season hasn't gone the way you'd wanted, even though Jaden Rashada just flipped, you're still a top 10 recruiting class with 19 individuals. And what that tells me is that your recruiting class may not have as many numbers as some other classes, and you're not far behind. I mean, we're talking 3-4 recruits here and there. You're right there. But the reason I point that out, it's impressive to be a top 10 recruiting class with 19 individuals because that points to the quality of each of your recruits. I digress. This is a hit for Miami, and there is no way around this. Jaden Rashada was a guy that moved the needle for the Miami Hurricanes, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here. Likewise, if you're the Florida Gators, what a win. Billy Napier gets a huge win, and one of the things we talked about earlier this week that really intrigues me whenever we're talking about recruiting is whenever institutions have something on the line. What do I mean when I say that? Well, it gets me back to Colton Vasek earlier this week, the prospect who was committed to the Oklahoma Sooners but flipped to the Texas Longhorns. I love it whenever we see battles between bitter rival institutions or between institutions in the same state. So Miami, Florida, they're always more impactful, in my opinion. They just mean a little bit more, and they're really fun to watch. So it was super interesting to see Jaden Rashada flip from Miami to Florida, though it makes sense considering Florida was right there whenever he made his commitment. But this gets us to the tough question we have to ask of the Miami Hurricanes, the question I've already asked all of you. Is it time to panic for Miami? And though I don't think it's time to outright hit the panic button in order to eject everything, I do think there's some cause for concern. And if you are familiar with my content, one of the themes whenever we're talking about coaches is I think coaches need to be given time. Cristobal hasn't even been there a year. He needs to be given time to implement his culture, to implement his changes. And then once that time is given, we can get a more conclusive view about how Mario Cristobal's time at Miami was. Until that point, it's just way too early. However, this gets us into where there's cause for concern. And let's be very forthright here. If you were Jaden Rashada and you watched Miami this year, it's one thing to see a team losing. But whenever you watched a quarterback, such as Tyler Van Dyke, that many in the national media were so excited to see, including myself. Remember, over the summer I talked about Tyler Van Dyke was a prospect I was really excited to watch. I think there's an argument, and unfortunately so, that Tyler Van Dyke has actually regressed this year. Now, we can point to several different areas. We can point to the lack of a consistent receiving threat. We can point to several different things, but the truth at the end of the day is that he has not had a great year, and the Miami offense has not had a good year. And the fact that we're even asking the question, has one of the most exciting quarterback prospects in college football regressed under Josh Gattis? That's a problematic question to be asking in and of itself. And let me make myself very clear here. I don't blame Tyler Van Dyke for this. I don't look at the development that has occurred this season and then think this is on Tyler Van Dyke. I think there are going to be a lot of questions asked about offensive coordinator Josh Gattis this offseason. Because it's not like Tyler Van Dyke forgot how to play football. He's still one of the most gifted prospects. But at the same time, what we've seen from this Miami offense just isn't working this year. And I'm not contending Josh Gattis is a bad offensive coordinator. My contention is what is being done isn't working. So much so that Tyler Van Dyke didn't get the year so many people were excited for him to have, and now we're sitting here having this conversation, where a top 100 prospect at the quarterback position has decommitted, and we have to ask how much of that goes back to what Rashada saw this season with the struggles of this Miami offense. But this really gets us into the last area. What implications do winning have on your recruiting classes? Because not too long ago, we heard Jimbo Fisher, whenever he was asked about Texas A&M's lackluster season, say, yes, but because we're not winning, that provides more opportunities for the kids we're committing to try and come in and get early playing time. And while there is something to that, Jimbo only told half the story, and now it's up to us to tell the rest of the story. So winning is not the end-all be-all in college football recruiting. However, it certainly does help. It isn't meaningless. And the reason it isn't meaningless is because we then have to ask the question, what does winning usually imply? Winning typically implies consistency. Where there's consistency, typically there's development happening. And those are the things that these college football recruits are looking for. Now, an institution winning isn't mandatory to get in recruiting wins. If you're not an institution that's winning, the way you can still get in these recruiting wins is showing you're an institution that deserves for people to have faith placed upon you. You're showing something week in, week out. You're showing development. You're showing a cause for excitement. You're showing these recruits that, hey, there is a reason for you to still want to come here. I know right now we're losing games, but we're building something. You can see it. Now just imagine you come in here and you can be the catalyst that really gets us over the hump. Those are the pitches that are being given to these prospects from institutions that, even though they may not be winning, look like they're trending in the right direction. For Miami, that's why it's so important right now to start trending in the right direction. We've had this conversation for Texas A&M, and I'm going to use them as an example because it was Jimbo Fisher that really said this. For A&M, they need to start trending in the right direction. Because yes, if you're losing, that can imply that there's more opportunities for young players to play. But at the same time, you need to give them a reason to want to come to a place where they're going to be asked to try and turn it around. Are you developing them? Are you making a culture that's conducive to success? Are there signs pointing to where there will be a positive outcome in the near future? If the answer to all three of those questions are no, it doesn't matter if a prospect can come in day one and start. They know they're not going to be putting themselves in the best place to succeed, which is why we see prospects go to Georgia, go to Alabama, go to Ohio State and sit, because they have faith that once I get my opportunity, I'm going to be developed. They have faith in a positive outcome being able to be achieved. You have to give these prospects faith. And if you can give them that, you can be an institution that may not be having the season you'd like, but still be recruiting at a real high level. So for Miami, it's going to be incredibly important that they move the needle in some capacity, that they try and recapture faith and show these prospects there's a reason you need to be putting your faith in us long term. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.